loves is Dr. Simone Ellis with Beyond the Chair podcast. Now, this guest is somebody who is especially dear to my heart. If I could have another brother from another mother, it would be totally him. The reason why I think this guest is so special is because we had the opportunity of meeting through my associate. And this was a kindred spirit of seeing people of like mind connect to like mind. I speak very highly of him because he keeps me sound. I hope I do the same for him. Dr. Avi Patel, thank you so much, my brother, for coming on this show today. We look so much alike, right? You can see it in the glasses.
Yeah, we're the same. We're basically the same person.
We're
honestly.
basically the same minus the facial hair. And like, shout out to my waxologist for waxing it. So. Well, for everybody who does not know, Avi has an amazing journey and an amazing story. I like to kind of allow them to talk about the bio. So, Avi, tell me where you're from, why you even got into dentistry, and where you are, located currently now.
Yeah. I mean, first off, I have been looking forward to this podcast for months. Ever since you fired it back up, I was like, Simone, get me on this thing. And you're like, yeah, don't worry, I got you. So I'm pumped. That being said, yes, I was born in California, just outside of LA, grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, did undergrad at UCF in Orlando. I went to NYU for dental school.
Wow.
And then practiced in the Northeast for a couple years. And then about 3 years ago, my wife and dog Simba and myself came on down to Austin, Texas. So yeah, unintentionally have lived in like some of the biggest, most controversial states in the country.
Well, and I think we share that too because we've used education to be our location. Like, hey, do you like the East Coast? Do you like the West Coast? Like, what do you like? I didn't do the West
Let's go try
Coast.
this place out for a couple years. Yeah,
why not? And we both ended up back in Tejas, right? So Texas it is. Let's talk a little bit about like your journey because although we look like we're the same person, clearly we're not the same age. And so tell me, when you started dentistry, what were your thoughts about why you even got into dentistry as a whole in the first place?
Yeah. So for me, growing up, first of all, I didn't want to be a dentist. I actually wanted to be an NBA basketball player.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So so I was 5'10" in like the 6th grade.
Like, so you're like, I'm definitely Kobe. Like,
I was like, yeah, I was just like Kobe. Like, this is where we're basically. If me and you were the same person at that time, I was like, me and Kobe are basically the same person. So that was my goal. And then my parents very kindly nudged me into the direction of making me realize that I should do something with my brain and not just rely on my body.
I got it.
And then eventually, I didn't listen to them at first, but then I did. And when I did listen to them, it's because I went from being one of the tallest people in school to one of the shortest. So I was like, oh yeah, it was in high school. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, there's some real big.
There's some truth to this. Here. Like they knew before I knew.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll do something with my brain. So I always picking dentistry was kind of logical for me. Like it was, growing up in an Indian household, there's very high expectations placed on you in terms of what they want you to be as a professional, right? It's doctor, lawyer, engineer, like that whole thing. And it was like my parents kind of like they gave me like freedom within that realm. And so then I ended up actually shadowing my uncle. He's a dentist up in New York. And so I went to shadow him for a summer and I saw him work and I realized like I actually fell in love with the profession because of the lifestyle that my uncle was living, right? It was, outside of the office, he was a family man, traveled with his family, golfed, always looked like he was having a good time. I couldn't smell any stress coming off of him. Like he just seemed like he was loving life. And I'm like, whatever he's doing, that seems like it's a good thing to be doing. And he was a dentist. And so I would go, I shadowed him for a couple weeks out of the summer and he'd work on his patients and I would just see the transformations that he would do. He wasn't he wasn't a cosmetic dentist. He was one of your older generation, can do everything type of dentist, right? And I just saw how patients would come in pain and they would leave happy. and I would see him, just like shooting the shit with patients, everyone just kind of having a good time. And I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to do. But
Yeah.
what put the nail in the coffin for me was while I was there, he had a dinner party and all his friends were there. Everyone's having a good time. And then I'm talking to one of his buddies who's a neurosurgeon. And so the neurosurgeon's like talking to me, he's like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And this is when I was 16. And I was just like, well, I want to be a doctor of some sort, do something in medicine. And he's like, well, you got to make a decision. Do you want to go to dental school or you want to go to med school? And I was like, okay. And then he kept kind of talking to me. And then I kind of looked at it and it was like a light bulb went off. Like everybody in the room was having a good time. My uncle was having a blast. And the neurosurgeon was talking to this 16-year-old. And I was just like, by the way, like, why aren't you hanging out with them? He's like, oh, I'm on call. He's like, I may have to go into work. And I'm like,
You're like, this
oh.
does
So I was
not
like,
fit the lifestyle that I
yeah,
want.
I was like, so you went to way more school. You did all this extra stuff and you still at 40 are not like,
Kicking it.
living it up. I was like, I think I'm going to go be a dentist.
So you're like, say less. I don't need that type of negativity in my life.
That's it. I was just like, I'm all for helping people, but like, that's it, right? Is just I saw dentistry, I saw an opportunity for balance.
Yeah.
Where you could work hard, live a good life, make an impact, and overall be happy. So that to me was like my gold standard. So I was super determined to get in dental school. I finished undergrad in 3 years. I graduated, and then I got into NYU was my first choice. I wanted to go to a big city. And then that's where Neha was. She's my wife now, but we were dating at the time. So it was just really cool to I was 21, I was living in Manhattan and I was studying dentistry, and it was very much like work hard, play hard mentality. And it was great. And
that's crazy. I never thought about dentistry from a lifestyle perspective when I went into it. Like for me, it was my dad's getting his tooth pulled at 2nd grade, and I'm like, this shit is cool. I want to do that. I mean, like literally at 7, like, what just came out of his mouth? Oh, like sign me up. I don't know why that was fascinating, but it was. And I just came home and was like, Mom, that's what I want to do. And she was like, all right, like that's it. I never thought about the lifestyle portion of it. And so interesting how we get into our professions based off of, I didn't have anybody in my family that was a dentist. Actually, my mother absolutely wanted me to be an engineer because at that time, Black women in engineering was kind of like unheard of. So it was like this whole push for STEM programs. And I was like, Ma, like I suck at physics, like I suck at math, like I'm not. This is not going to be a thing.
Black women in dentistry wasn't really a thing either. So
so that was even more of not a thing. Like right, so she didn't even. She was like, "What? Be a dentist?" Like I remember this is before the internet, right? So, I'm pulling out Barron's. I don't even know what this is.
I know what Barron's is.
Right? There's this thing called the library, and at the library, you go get books. So you know what Barron's is. You go get these books, and I'm like, Mom, this is what a profession is, dentist, and this is how much they made. And in our household, it wasn't that you had to fall into these categories per se. You had to make double of what the parents were making, right? So if my mother was making $50,000, I had to pick a profession that was making $100,000. So that's kind of
like
wild.
That.
Yeah, how you got it.
No, but doubling up on that, it also goes to show you like dentistry is actually like it's a cool profession in the sense where the type of people it attracts, right? Like we both are in this profession, and it attracts, and we're very different stories, right? And you've interviewed other people who have, also it's like such like creative people, like different levels of smarts, different experiences that they all come in to this field. And then what the unfortunate part is what happens is then you go into this, you go to dental school and then you come out and then you have a couple of associateships, whatever. And then all of a sudden, all these beautiful, people of different shapes, sizes, and all that stuff come out and their mentality just gets squared off.
Yeah.
Boom. And now there's this box that everybody just coasts in, and most people aren't that happy in it. So,
and we're
I know we've had a bunch of talks, and I'm sure we could get into that, but
well, no, and I definitely want to, because you start off inspired, and the first question that came to my mind was, and I know our topic today, guys, is leveraging online courses and how you actually can impact your dental influence, which is, I mean, he's the GOAT at it right now. I'm loving it. But before we go there, the first thing that I was thinking of was, was your uncle really as happy as you saw him to be, or had he figured out different ways to kind of manage, expectations in dentistry.
I think just observing him then and even now, he he was also a different generation of dentists, right? There wasn't as much debt necessarily. There still was some pressure for him, but it was very much like he kind of committed to his craft, right?
Mm.
And I think because he committed to his craft, you could see his like kind of being in his zone of genius, but then also he definitely knows how to de-stress. Like
Mm.
he was traveling. He loves playing golf. So he had time where he was away from the practice playing golf, but like it very much does like I think he cracked the code and found his sweet spot of like you like to talk about balance.
Yeah.
Um so that's what it was, right? And it's like because he would work some weekends, but he worked on the weekends because he wanted to. Like
Not
he
because he
wanted to
had
serve his
to
patients.
financially, like, right.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, because he would also he'd be the same. He would work on some Saturdays, but he'd be the same dentist to be gone for 3 weeks. You wouldn't find him during the holidays. He'd be gone.
Yeah, and I think that's so cool that you had that experience because, as a person, like I said, I didn't have anything. I didn't have anybody medical in my family, so the understanding of what it took to be a dentist, I don't
Mm.
think I clearly understood. And what I did understand though was the hard work element of it, and so like what you had to put in the grind element because I had a blue collar father who was a postal worker, so I mean, he got up and I mean, Kansas has snow. And I'm not talking about like, this is slow, look, you get stuck somewhere. And he would figure out a way to get to that post office to, help distribute mail. So I
Wow.
understood that work ethic, but the stress and the things that we were talking about here in a moment, I don't think I had a clear expectation of. So now you get married, you decide for some reason in your crazy ass mind to go to NYU, which not hating on NYU, but let's talk about that tuition is wild. It
Yeah.
is one of the most expensive schools out there. Did you think about that before you actually decided to go to NYU, or are you just like, I just want to be in New York and Neha's here, so I just need to be close to her?
That's a great question, and I love talking about it because I think what it was is in my mind, I trusted that I would make the money on the back end to pay for it.
Okay.
I wasn't that like I knew it was an investment. I knew dental school was an investment in me, and I was going to come out of this with a set of skills, and I was trusting that at the end of the day I would be able to make that up. So I was just like in my 20s, what better place to live than New York City? You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like that's what I thought because I was also coming from Florida, so I wanted the change. I wanted the energy. I had visited before. I loved
Mm-hmm.
it. So I was just like, yeah, like let's do it up. I'm not gonna probably ever get to live here ever again, so I might as well go because it's. I looked at as being a student, it's like a cheat code, right? It's like you got you don't have a real schedule. Like you don't operate like a real human. Like it was so like some of the, we'd have exams on Wednesdays and then everybody would go out drinking afterwards because we'd have like 4 exams in a day.
Yeah.
And then I would invite Neha out and then she'd come and she'd leave before the night was over. I'm like, where you going, babe? And she's just like, I have work
Like,
tomorrow.
I'm a
She's like,
real adult, guys. Like,
yeah.
calm down. I have bills to pay and I have taxes. I
And
have
I'm
real
like,
taxes.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, I got lab at 6 p.m. tomorrow, so I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
she's just
And
like,
that's
what?
crazy because my dental experience, I was like not kicking it. And I was in Newark. So I'm not too far
Mm,
from you. And I was like, this is hell. Like, I am literally here in the library on the Saturday. So maybe you're just one of those
yeah.
smart kids, but you decided. So the cost wasn't a thing to you about, you were just
Yeah.
like trying to create an experience.
Yes, I was trying to make the most of that time because I also knew it was going to be stressful. So I was just like, if I'm going to be putting in the work and the
Mm.
hours to have to be stressed and like, perform well in school, like I also want to be able to enjoy my time outside of it. So I think, and I didn't actually, I don't think I could have articulated that back then,
Yeah.
but I think that's just kind of how I've lived my life of very much like work hard, play hard, but then finding that balance. Yeah, that's kind of how I did it.
Yeah. For me, I went ahead and like this was a 50 schools I think at that time of dental schools. I don't know how many there is now, but it was like 50. And I just went
Mm,
by and I was like, well, I could live there. I can't live here. I'll live
yeah,
here. And that's how the list came up. And then
that's
my mother was like, she had studied in or she had lived in Philly, so she was like, you're gonna love the East Coast. And I remember getting dropped off at the time my ex-husband and I were up there, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is, I mean, it's not Kansas. It is not Kansas. So I'm like,
no.
I am mortified. I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm square, so I'm like, this energy is very different for me.
Mm.
And moving to Texas though was a plus. So you decide to move to Texas, and you start practicing, and something hits you where you decide that you want to change or pivot outside of dentistry, not just practicing in the chair, but actually working on a business outside of practicing the chair. So
So,
talk about
so
that.
rewind just a sec. So basically, graduate dental school at NYU. Then I got 8 associateships in the Northeast in 2 years,
Eight?
right? 8 in 2 years.
What?
So
Why? Are you like a diva? Like, what happened? How did you get eight?
I'm not a diva. I'm not a diva. I felt the brunt of the dental industry in a matter of 2 years. So in
Wow.
first job, they weren't ready for an associate. They weren't busy enough. They didn't realize that till I was there. Also, I wasn't, it's not like I knew what the hell I was doing. I just came out of school. I
You're
thought there
like,
was
I
going to
can
be
see
some,
two patients a day. Like,
yeah,
throw
yeah.
them.
So it was that, but there was one where they hired me, and then 3 months later they sold the practice to two owners, so they didn't need me anymore. So they let me go.
Mm.
I mean, I've seen it all. I've worked at private, I've worked at Medicaid, I've worked at ESO, I've worked at PPO, I've worked at all that. So in the moment back then, it sucked because I was just like, what the hell, man? Like, I can't, like, Neha's at she's at a tech startup company, and I'm a dentist, and she's got more job stability than me. And then we were just
Mm.
like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah,
And that's where it was just like, you know what? I'm sure this is all happening for a reason. Like, and now when I look back, I saw 8 different ways to practice dentistry,
I love
right?
that.
So I saw 8 different ways to do it, and I saw that nobody's doing it the same way. Everybody's doing it differently. Some people know their shit, and a lot of them don't. Like I had this perception where if you're a dental practice owner, you're like cream of the crop. You got your stuff together. You know what's good. And I saw, and I'm like, because I would work in an office that had systems, and then the very next, and I would, because I was some of these I was like part time in
Right.
two, right? And I go to another office, there's no system. And I'm like, what? They're like, yep, here you go. Here's your schedule. Here's a hand piece. Like, go for it. And I'm like, well, is there a handoff? Like, how do you guys like to do
Right.
this? Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm just like a year and a half out, right?
So you're like, this is
But
the absolute way that I should be learning this profession, which is
yeah, I was just like, oh,
unorganized.
cool. So I was like, oh, so none of y'all know what you're doing? Sick. Like, okay, dope.
Same here.
Yeah, I was like, cool. Glad we're all like in this together. But so it was just a bunch of different situations. And then so what that ended up building for me, right, is this like foundation where I understand what new doctors go through when they come into the field. And so back then I didn't know what I was going to do with that. Now moving forward in the future, like I have an idea of how I want to make an impact in the field, which we can get to. But fast forward, I got to a point where I was burning out because I was burning out on the bread and butter, and I was like, damn, there has to be more in this field.
Yeah.
And then so the pandemic hits, so everyone's shut down, everyone's on pause, and then I'm like, you know what? It's too early for me to be burnt out on this career. Like, I need to learn. So I invested in education, right? So I started learning how to do aligners, and I learned how to do implants. Then I go back to work when we open up, and I'm like, hey, I would love to do this. Like, I had like 5 aligner cases sold. But basically I was like, we're working on the logistics. So I told the owner, and he's like, yeah, let's meet, let's talk about it. And I'm like, hey, I got these patients. Like, this is the perfect office for aligners. Like, everybody, all the patients were like, 6-figure salaries, like great demographic. They all had relapse. And I was like, hey, I really think this could really grow the practice since you're just referring this stuff. He's like, you know what? No, like aligners aren't profitable. He's like, root canals are profitable. He's like, you need to get better at root canals, and that's what you need to do. And then you need to refer ortho. And I'm like, but I don't like root canals.
Like,
So I was just like,
what dentist really likes?
so the practicing owner, yeah, it's just like, so I was like, you know what? All right, I don't know if this is gonna work. And also I was like, I'm pretty sure you're wrong about aligners not being profitable. So then we packed up and then we moved to Austin because at that point I had worked at 8 practices in Connecticut. Connecticut's not a big state. It's like I was on Indeed and I saw the same job listings that I had already previously worked at. I was like, okay, we got to go. Like, there's nothing here.
There's nothing here for me.
Yeah, there's nothing here. So we moved during the pandemic. We come down to Austin. I work for a small group practice, and they're the exact opposite. They're like, here's an implant system, here's an iTero. You want to learn, you want to do stuff, go for it. We support you. And I was like, okay, sweet. So then I got on a webinar. Dr. Christina Blocker was talking. She gave a bunch of Invisalign tips, and then she's like, if you ever have any questions, just email me. And then so I emailed her uh, pretty much nonstop with like questions and case setups and all this stuff. And then next thing you know, I started 50 cases in 6 months.
Wow. Now, for
So
people who may not understand like the intensity of that, starting 50 cases when most people like don't do 50 cases in a year is amazing. So I always like to highlight you when you're telling me some amazing stuff, and that's pretty amazing. What
thank
got
you.
you to starting 50 cases? What was it? Was it confidence? Was it education? Was it, support?
Yeah, I think it was definitely all of that. But what I had done with Dr. Blocker is I basically asked her, I was just like, okay, I need to know what I should do, like what I can do, what I should not do, and how I can avoid like hurting people. Right.
Mm.
I was like, just give me these like just help me with these guardrails. And then so she did. She gave me some tips. And then so I created this filter and I kind of knew like, okay, this is what I should be doing, this is what I should not be doing. But I was talking about it with every patient that could benefit from it, right? Just alignment. And then it was whether I would treat them or the specialist would. So I was having these conversations, and then the team started to gravitate towards me because I started involving them. I started empowering them. They saw my excitement and passion for this stuff, and then they jumped on board because it was exciting for them too. And then next thing you know, that's how we scale it, right? And everybody has a role, and then I'm having this success, and the reps were just like, hey, what are you doing, like how are you doing this? And then I was like, oh, I'm just talking about it. And they're like, what? They're like, that's, what do you mean? And then I was like, yeah, I'm talking about it with my patients and I'm educating them and I'm showing them the value and all that. And they're just like, okay, that's not common. And I'm like, okay, well, so then at that point I was like, I don't know what you want me to do. So I naturally wanted to share this, right? Because all of a sudden, I got those three pillars that originally got me into dentistry that I had lost, right? Which was time, money, and fulfillment,
Mm.
right? I had more time now because when you're doing aligners, you don't really need to be in the chair. You're making more money because it's high ticket. And I felt more fulfilled because I was actually part of like a transformation with these patients. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like they would come out on the other end, they're flossing more than they used to. They're like, doc, like I feel the difference. Like I can actually bite into things and stuff's not getting caught in my teeth and whatever it was. It was not cosmetics. It was all oral health and function. And to me, I was like, damn, this is sick. I need to share this with other people. So I started teaching the docs in the office. Doctor practiced for like 20 something years. He was an associate with me after he sold his practice. And then I taught him. He's like, holy crap. I wish I started doing this earlier in my career. And then this next part of like, you know how like everybody has passion, right? But like passion is not just one thing, and passion changes over time. Passion can also grow. We're capable of having multiple passions. That this is something that I've learned. And so as much as a passion of mine was doing the aligners, this next kind of level of passion was like teaching people how to do it. So then that's I was like, all right, I want to teach people how to do this. And so I went to the head of the DSO and I was just like, hey guys, like, can we create a role for me where I can spend maybe 2 days out of the chair and I can coach up all these dentists? I can be like the internal, right, aligner doc. And they saw the value in it, but they were just like, but we just want you to like focus on producing because that's a big ask. And I'm like, okay, cool. I was bummed. Neha was like, she's like, well, if you want to do that, she's like, why don't you just start consulting? She's like, just do some one-on-one stuff locally. And then so I was like, all right, I don't know what consulting is or like how to start that. So she's
Yeah.
just like, okay. So she helped me do the LLC and whatnot. I start working with doctors locally. A doctor that I worked with, he started 25 cases in 2 months. He had no idea how to do aligners
Wow.
before that. So I'm like, oh snap, like I have a
Like, I'm
curriculum here.
actually pretty good at teaching people this
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Not
And
only
I'm
can I
oh my
close
God.
cases on my own, but like I can actually teach someone else how to close
It,
cases as well.
exactly. So that's where it was like, okay, and I was like, this is fun. Like I like this. And
Yeah.
so I recognized that. And then I was like, all right, cool. Like, how do I grow this? And then so the way that I looked to grow it was through social media. And so I basically, right, because I was reading all these different books like Grant Cardone, 10X, all this stuff. Everyone's like, yeah, social media, like you got to get out there and start talking about stuff. So I did, and I was using Instagram Reels as a way to basically generate leads back when I had the consulting business for aligners. And I was getting leads. I was getting leads from all over the freaking world. There were people from Trinidad, Singapore, like all these places calling in. And then, I mean, none of like they didn't convert, but like it was still crazy because like, oh my God, this
You're
is
like
like big.
your exposure or
Mm-hmm.
your wingspan is now worldwide.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And so it's like this in-person one-on-one consulting thing wasn't really going to jive with that. So
Yeah.
then that's when the next mentor in my life came in, which is Dr. Ranesh. He reached out on Instagram. He's like, I see what you're doing. He's just like, you thought about making a course? And then I was just like, a course? Me? Like, there's no way. Like, I can't have a course. And he's like, well, you're already teaching people. He's like, a course is just a more accessible and efficient way to teach others. That way you can have, and you can have even a bigger impact than what you're doing right now. So this was May 2022. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, cool. Like, let's go for it. So I started consuming all the content to learn how to make a course, made a whole like webinar for it, launched it, and then people enrolled. And I was just like, oh my God, like my first launch was like, I think 3 doctors like enrolled in the program live, and then 1 doctor enrolled like right before the deadline. So I had 4 doctors that, one
Just
was in
started
the
immediately.
UK,
Yeah.
3 were in the States, like East Coast, West Coast. And I was just like, oh my God, this is sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then yeah. And then I did it again and again and again because I was doing it live, right? Because I thought, oh, this is the best way to teach. But I realized like dentists, they all can't commit to a time. Like, there's different modes of teaching and having stuff accessible. So then I just started to put on this like entrepreneur hat, online business owner hat, and I just started to like commit time, education, and resources to learning all about this, and just going full send on it. And now, I've got over 140 doctors in the program, and yeah, I mean,
Can
it's
we
changed.
like shout out that like because I mean so again like I said I get an opportunity to see when the wins are, which I want you to continue to always share with me, even if it takes me a day to get right back to it. I'm just like, I love seeing you thrive and seeing you win. But, even that journey of starting off with 4 versus to 140 is amazing growth. So, one thing I want to ask you is how do you feel like the dental industry really embraced online courses?
Say that again. How does the dental industry do what to the courses?
Embraces online courses, especially for people who maybe like this is perking their ideas to say, well, maybe I should create a course myself. How did you feel like the dental industry embraced online courses? Because that's not our natural form. That wasn't originally before pre-pandemic our
Yes.
natural form of ingesting, right? We go to conferences, we go
Mm-hmm.
live with 2 courses. My Invisalign journey was not necessarily online, it was in person, and then it was at a conference. So for people who are maybe concerned about how to even get started or even approaching this online world, how do you feel like it's been embraced?
I think it is in a transition phase. I don't think we're anywhere near max capacity, but I do think the current generation and future generations prefers this because what the pandemic did is it taught everybody how valuable time is. People who didn't value time pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, way more people do. And so I think also so it's been, to answer the question, it has been welcomed. And I think it's appreciated because it's accessible. It is super resourceful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just you sit in a lecture hall for 2 days, you go back to work, and then you can never come back to that content unless you took amazing notes, right? It's like, no. You can come back, you can watch it all again.
Right.
You can watch it again in 6 months, watch it in a year, do whatever. So I think it has helped because also when you take into account how busy dentists' lives are, online courses make more sense than the in-person for different aspects and different things,
Yeah,
right?
you don't have to
Obviously,
shut
if you're
down a day of production to go
no,
like which is what doctors usually like. I don't want to take away to learn something to lose something, which is I think a very when we think about that from because I used to be that way. I'd be like, oh my God, I got to close down a whole day, like a whole day. And then you're like, well,
that $3,000 course, if you close on a whole day, just became a $10,000 course.
and we don't think about that from the investment perspective, right? We're just like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God. And as an entrepreneur, I really understand that it was very hard to close down the whole office and pay people for a day to learn. I think the problem now I go back and I think about like, okay, why was that? implementation, I think, was the issue, right? So like
Yes.
you take the class, but then you don't implement it, so you really don't get the 3,000 to 10,000. But
No.
you're completely right. Post pandemic, people are like, not only do I need to learn, but I gotta put this stuff in play.
You got to put it in play. You need the accountability. You need the support. Like, there's just, it's so much, in my opinion, better online learning than in person because, like you said, outside of the accessibility, it's the implementation. It's that cool. Like, in anything in dentistry, it's not just to snap the fingers, right? It takes work, it takes time, it takes commitment. And like, I'm sorry, but you can't afford to keep flying back to this lecture hall to go learn this stuff, right?
Right.
So no, it's great. And I think, more and more people are creating things in the online space and other industries, and dentistry is taking note. And yeah, I think it's a lot of fun to be on the creative side of it as well, because it's just a great way to get education out there.
Yeah, and then let's talk about how it's grown your influence because,
Mm.
you started the class, how many followers did you have? And now, so again, like I love the messages where it's like, sis, and I'm like, bro, you up. Like it's definitely you're like blowing
So
up
so so
faster.
side note, before all that, so I started off with like 850 followers, friends and family. When Simone and I first met over the phone, I mean, Simone has always been in like, I mean, I keep tabs. It's like in the 30s. Like
Always in the
you
30s.
got your age, and I was like, damn, like this doctor's famous. Like she's got a shit ton of followers. Like this is nuts. That's what like. That
That's
is
what you
what
think.
everybody thinks, right?
Yeah.
They don't think you are people, and it's funny because it's like you think just because people have a lot of followers, all of a sudden they're this different person. It's like, and that's why I'm so grateful to have even met you in person now multiple times, and kind of seen it where it's just like, no, like Simone's a real person, and like, yeah, she's got followers, but she's still doing her thing, and I think that's what's so cool to see. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think I'm at like 40,000,
Yeah,
but
like
like,
he's totally surpassed me. And let's talk about but what I will say is this, you show up. And he
you know,
helps me to show up because like at first, so even though so I started off with IGTV, that's kind of how I trended up, right? And then
wow,
IGTV changed. And if I'm being honest, I transitioned in from ownership to being like to sell so I could focus on this. But there was a depression that set in, and Evie knows this. So I couldn't in the pandemic where people were thriving. I froze. I
mm,
literally froze. I couldn't figure out what was the next step. And for me, when you have depression, when you had depressive moments, because it was situational depression, like most people during the pandemic, or no, let me not say that. Some people experience situational depression during the pandemic. I lack creativity during that period of time. Like
yeah,
I can't. Whereas I think I'm so proud of you and others that have, real talk. You guys were able to kind of move forward during the pandemic, which would also help the creative space. So you stay consistent. Now I see what's crazy is I literally have seen my followers now. They're going up, and I'm like, oh, it's because I'm posting every day, which
and
Avi has told me.
it's that simple, right?
It's
Like for
that
anybody that's
simple.
listening, that's like, oh, I want to grow my page, or oh, I don't know. It's like, first of all, just post,
Yeah.
like just post. Stop overthinking it. No, realize like no one's really watching, or even if they are watching, they're not going to remember, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and then be consistent. Like 2022, I set a goal in the beginning of the year. It's like, I'm going to make a robe talk once a day, every day for the whole year.
I
And so I
remember
did.
those. Yeah.
Every morning, every morning I'd be in my robe, I'd be doing my morning routine, and I'd throw out like a mindset, a motivation, just something. And I was like, it doesn't matter if I was like, I knew those things weren't going to go viral. Like, I mean, there was a time where I was like, oh, maybe this one will pop off. This was like a fire point, but nope, 400 views, like something, like just something ridiculous.
You're like,
um,
no one cares.
yeah.
No one, like, cause no, seriously, when I get a video that's only like 1,000, I'm like, that's supposed to be good. And then I get like I'm in a swim, I'm like that, cause Evie sees that too. I'm like, no, 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 like this one's gonna be good. And then I'll do something where I'm like, and it's like, oh yeah, more views. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like that one was
Yep.
like
That's
fire right
how
there.
that's how it works. But the thing is like what it did is it taught me, a bunch of things. It taught me, one, how to get good at speaking in front of a camera. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can do it. Like I can do it now. And it's to the point where I don't even know how I'm doing it or what I'm doing. I'm just talking. And then like I'll best moment, my dad, right? When I first started this stuff, my dad told me, he's like, "Hey, it's like your videos." He's like, it's monotone. He's like, they're kind of boring. Like, he's like, you gotta add a little bit more emotion, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, man, like, how hard it is to like get in front of a camera. Like I said, but classic dad, just telling you how it is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, shit. And then like one of the best moments in this journey was like randomly he saw one of my, because I mean I post, I don't even know what the hell's going up half the time, but one time he sent my own video to me. He was just like, he's like, "You've gotten so good at talking." He's like, "This was super
Oh, come
engaging." I was
on,
just like,
Dad.
damn. I was like, "Thanks, Dad." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, you're doing great." He's like, this was really good to watch." And I'm like, nice. Like if I get
Oh,
the dad's stamp of approval, like we're rocking.
you're like, I done made my people proud.
Yup.
I love
Yup.
that. So then now that you've decided, like, okay, you go on your aligner journey, you decide to start developing courses, what do you feel like from a dental perspective has been your ability to create that niche or that carve? And I think this is a great, you're carving out your niche.
Mhm.
Again, part of I might as well be intimate, right? We were here on a podcast. We're spending time. He gets a chance to have my intimate thoughts where I'm just like, he's like, Simone. And people who know me know that I'm like on 10 all the time. But what it is that first, the fear of
Mhm.
showing up on those videos, right? And my thing was not necessarily that I didn't know what to say. I was concerned about how I looked because I was like, oh, well, guys, they don't have to put on makeup. They don't have to put on don't get their hair done. Like this is crafted. Okay. Like this is something that I have to think about. I was like, well, I'm not a guy, so I can't just show up. And then,
Limiting belief.
right. And then also too, imposter syndrome, right? Not that I don't know
Mhm.
it. Not that I've not been successful, not that we've not had courses that actually had people participate. It's the moment of like, wait, is this going to be my niche or this is not going to be my niche? So I want to talk to,
It's that fear of being stuck.
yeah. Yeah. And that's intense, especially when, like, what did you say before you got on here? You're like, whoa, this setup is legit. And that's the type of
Yep.
people that usually are in dentistry. We are, even though we have different personalities, one of the things that I think is pretty common for dentists is that we're A type. So you kind of
Mm.
want things to be a certain way, and you are like, okay, I'm going to play around. Like, look at your setup. Your setup is dope as hell in the back, right? Like it's.
Thank you.
I love the sign, the green. Like your intention to detail. That can sometimes make people like, I don't
This
have
this
that.
this happened over time though. You got to
Yeah.
remember that, right? Like it wasn't like this. This is Neha's old office. Like I kicked her out. Like
I
she
Is that a day bed on the side? Like I love it. I'm like, look,
that's our bed. Yeah, this is our second. So we have a 2 bedroom apartment. This is bedroom number 2, and it is a guest bed and an office space.
yep,
And this used to be Neha's, but then we used to like trade back and forth. Like in January, I went part time with dentistry, so I was here more. But then whenever I'd record videos, I was like, babe, this is my like studio, but it's just like a little corner in the apartment,
yeah,
right? But that being said, yeah, I get it. Like everybody, because here's the thing that sucks, right? It's like when the people who stay consistent and start kind of like with nothing and then grow to have something over time, the stuff comes, right? Like the lights, the cameras, the microphone. Nobody, it's rare that you see somebody from the beginning, because from the beginning it wasn't any of this. It was just, I mean, it wasn't even this microphone. Like it was like my iPhone, and it was like a freaking lav mic,
lava
and
mic,
like, you know what
yeah,
I mean? And like, but what happens is a lot of people give up. They start with that, and then they don't keep going. They stop at the 20%. The people who you see who are making it and making moves, you can talk to every single one of them. They all started at the same place, right? But they stayed consistent, and then they grew, and then that's when people invested back into the business, and then that's how you see some of this stuff. So it's a matter of that consistency that gets you to that place of growth. But you got to start, which we've talked about so many times for you. And you have, like, you've done the fact that you've like fired the podcast up, and like the momentum that you have and the conversations you've had, like it's also very inspiring for me to see, for for someone who started something, had a bunch of things going on, and then for you to be like, okay, let's focus, and then got focused, and then now you've kind of seen like your different streams grow.
Yeah, I think that because of the fact that, and we've talked about this as well, like in doctors, I think that especially when you get into the office, right, it's a fucking whirlwind. Like on Tuesdays and
Mm,
Wednesdays for me, I'm like, I don't know like how I'm coming and I'm going, and that can be discouraging, right? It's exhausting also too from a creativity standpoint. So what I had to get tighter about, we had an opportunity to go to Austin on a chorus, and really that has been my like, okay, this switch. So things that I think about is that if you want to get started too, one, being around people and individuals who are of like mind, because
mm-hmm.
I hadn't realized until we got together that I was missing you were the missing link, and not just you as a person, but that environment was a
Yeah.
missing link. I lacked inspiration. I'm a person that likes to be inspired by people who are doing things, amazing things. And when you get kind of in the office, guys, sometimes you're around the same thing, you're around the same people. It's almost like you don't even know what's going on around the world because you're so focused. I think dentists can be like that.
Yeah.
I find most of my inspiration outside of dentistry. I'm inspired by these different people that are doing amazing things, and then that lights you up to be consistent. So if you are wanting to get started and getting nervous, just like I was, I think the thing is like changing up the environment. And then I had to get tighter on my systems. Like I had to get my planner. I'm sitting here and I'm like, nope, I have this, I have this, I have this, because I don't have the amount of time to be like, if I want to get this done, this is not, how much time do you spend taping? Like we don't play around with this. We got to read books, and I mean, like your
Mm-hmm.
workflow is intense, right?
Yeah, so I've built it in a systems format. Over like in early days, it was like when it was a hot mess. It was just like you're doing everything all the time, everywhere. But no, now it definitely takes time, right? Because like for me, for my YouTube channel, because I've created like a top-down content machine, so I spend all my time at the top making long form. So I'll make YouTube videos, and then I'll have my editing team cut those up into short form, which is then what everybody sees on Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and stuff like that. But there's scripting, there's idea creation, like right, it's coming with like I operate on a whole different level. It's kind of nuts now. Like I'm thinking about thumbnails and titles from a hook standpoint. What is going to get views on YouTube,
Right.
right? Because that's the focus that I have at this point, and then it's like that then kind of funnels down into the actual Instagram content that people see. So it's a machine, and it's like it's a legit business, but it takes time, and not to mention you got to get on camera and freaking record. Like
Which is
that in itself
energy.
is
Yes,
like that
right?
is like that is nuts. Like
How dare you
I
have
would
to be?
love.
And then wait, hold on. So you also sometimes have to be a model too, because those pictures that you have to take, you have to figure out like posing, and it's
Yeah.
a wild game. It's not something to be played with, but when you do embark upon it, like I do agree with you, the consistency. Again, like I said, I'm proud of
It,
your followers, and now I'm seeing myself like, oh, today I had 36.2, which has been not moving in that direction. So I mean, I'm hoping by the time this comes out, maybe we'll be at a whole 37. It's just the consistency of showing up. Yeah.
that's it too. And I think, even with like the numbers thing for you and for people watching, right? Like you got to remember, like I think Gary Vee or somebody posted it where it's like we're now accustomed to this, like, as much as everyone tries to preach like don't look at the numbers, don't look at the numbers. You got to remember what the hell a hundred views are, right? 100 views are 100 humans. Brendan did this thing at Kajabi where he
Yep.
said he had 100 people stand up in the room. It was a lot of people. And he's like, when you see 100 views on your piece of content, he's like, this is how many people have
Right.
seen it.
Right.
And it's like, whoa,
Because
that's
we've gotten so
nuts.
desensitized to having these. If I have a video that has 150,000, then this 1,000 is not that great.
Mm-hmm.
But guys, if you have a thousand sales, that's income
Yep.
for a year, depending upon your price point, right? So, talk to me about how you decided to get your unique expertise and strengths into aligners, and what you would advise others who are now like, okay, Avi, you got me hooked. I am excited. I want to try to talk about this online, but I don't know what I should talk about.
So I think for me, it was like, it's not that I think my experience was unique. I think I just took the time to recognize that I had a lot of challenges and then I had to go solve them. Like there wasn't one place where I could go to get all the answers to my problems, right? I had to actively solve them. So I think for anybody who's wondering how they can get started, it's like try to think of a time where you have struggled or there have been questions or hardship and then you had to overcome it, like you had to figure out a solution, right? And usually if you're, an action taker, someone that does do that naturally, it may take you a little bit to kind of remember because like, oh, I just do it, like I just did it, right? It's like, yeah, I don't know how I just did it. But what you got to do is you got to remember that that struggle existed, for a reason, and it's because it didn't have a solved solution for it. So what you do is you just take your experience and then you share that. And
Mm-hmm.
when you share that, that now is the framework to get somebody who has a problem. They can use your frameworks to then get to the solution. And it's like, in the very simplest way, it's like that's it, right? And so for me, I identified it as like, I had Dr. Blocker giving me advice. I was like, like looking stuff on the website and I was like taking courses, and it's just like all this stuff. I had my own things. Like I was trying different strategies out for scheduling and this and that. And then you just kind of put it all together, and then I just started sharing that out there. So yeah, I think, getting started with posting online, you do that, but you got to do what's authentic, right? Like for me, remember, like doing aligners like changed the way I view dentistry, and it changed my life as a practitioner. Like I started to have like passion for the field again. And so for me, I was just like, okay, like I want to share this. So
Mm-hmm.
I think when you can go that deep on something, again, that's also probably going to be super niche, which is a good thing. Um, Taking that and then just having the trust and belief in it to then share it will then lead to all the results that follow.
Yeah, and what do you feel like some specific ways to like help your audiences be engaged? Like, how were you able to find your tribe?
Yeah. So it's actually funny because the engagement on a lot of my posts about aligners was not that high. And what it is I think it's because learning how to do aligners, there's still like a bridge. Like general dentists are, imagine, over here on the left. And then knowing how to do aligners is on the right. And then there's this gap. And so my program and the whole purpose of my content is I'm trying to fill that gap and bring doctors from where they're at to learning how to get to aligners. And I thought by simplifying the tips, I thought that was, one way to do it. But what I'm learning now to get engagement is you have to speak to the present problems, the present emotions, the present feelings of people. And if you can speak to that and be authentic about it, you'll form a connection. And when you form a connection, that engagement will blow up. Right. And I think the best example I have of this is when I changed up my content a couple months ago and I just started actually talking about my real thoughts on the field. I started sharing how I feel like dentistry is a toxic industry. It's a toxic field because of the way a lot of people practice, the way owners treat associates, the way, team members can be. Like I just started talking about this stuff. And when I did that, the engagement was wild. Like I think I had a post also about how like I've worked with assistants where they say like a previous dentist they've worked for used to like throw instruments at them and stuff. And you hear that from some of the older ones. At least I did. And I posted that, and that thing has like over 2,000 comments of different dental professionals sharing stories about how they either had stuff thrown at them or they witnessed things being thrown in the office. And that to me is nuts. But it shows you like these are people also want to feel seen, right? And when you can speak to people's um,
Pain
you
points.
know, pain points,
Yeah.
it's going to be reciprocated.
Yeah. I think that that's been one of the biggest things that I've learned from you as well is that, and then for older doctors that are, we have a perfectly crafted way of going about things. You weren't really talking about, I know people overuse the word vulnerability, but it's the right word for right now. The
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable side of like, the nasty secrets, the dark secrets, the negative stuff that happens behind the scenes. You're just like, well, I've got to act like I have it all together. And the reality is that those pain points, those emotional moments that you have coming out on camera is really what connects you to the audience. That's what builds
Mm-hmm.
your
it's
influence.
it's being real. Like you
Right.
want to get engagement, be real. Like be
Yeah.
you. don't just put on a lab coat and teach people how to floss their teeth. Like, you do it, be authentic about the content you're putting out, and you will attract your tribe.
Yeah. So, like, now that you've created a course, like, how would you break down something that, it's complicated. It's a complex concept. So we had an interview with a doctor out in Norway, Dr. DeRose, and he was talking about how, I mean, over there, you probably would kill it because they're so resistant on aligners. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
so resistant as a country. And so that's a complicated conversation. And then you're like, now how do I break down this complicated conversation of aligners down into a course?
Yeah. So I think what I did is I simplified it to the point of like, okay, if I was somebody who didn't know anything about this, what would I basically I created it to help doctors get wins early, right? And I think that's what, anytime you're doing something new, anytime you're teaching somebody something for the first time, you have to find a way to boil it down to help them get wins early. Because when you get wins early, then you get confidence. Once you get confidence, you're unstoppable, and you'll light a match, right? So what I did is I teach doctors how to start and just do very simple cases. Moving the teeth part is not the hard part of this. The hard part of aligners is the implementation, right? It's how long do appointments need to be scheduled? How long do how does a team need to talk about it? How do you collect payment? What are different payment strategies? All the everything outside of moving the damn teeth is what makes aligners
Right.
difficult.
And some
When
people
you
feel like
right,
they're fearful of just that actual concept of moving teeth. And I'm like, guys, the cool thing about moving teeth is that you can just move that shit back if it doesn't.
yeah,
Like, just move it back. Like, because people are like, why do you just start so many cases? I'm like, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen here? Like, I move it in the wrong direction. Like, I'll just move it back. Like, it's totally okay.
yes, I know, but orthodontists cover your ears right now if you're listening. But they will scare the general dentist into
Yeah.
thinking that you can't. But when you are taking on simple cases, right, and doing that predictable stuff, that's how it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I try to keep everything as simple as possible, and I try to use like relatable words and comparisons, so that way this foreign thing that we don't know anything about, because most GPs don't know anything about it. Like, I tried, like, basically I say like the equivalent of a case that you need to start for aligners is compared to like doing your first extraction. Don't do an impacted third molar for your first extraction, right?
Right.
Your first extraction should be like a periodontally involved incisor. Do
Yeah.
that. Maybe just like do that. And
Just
then, you
how
know,
about deciduous teeth? Like, just do that. Like, just with one tooth if you need to. Like, if you're that fearful. I love that.
correct.
That's an easy way to kind of connect it and make it real for a person because they can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about any of the platforms that you're using or any sources, online tools, that you're using that have made your classes become successful.
So Kajabi is not like the first thing. I know you use Kajabi as well. Kajabi's
Yeah.
amazing. Yo, it's wild. They're running ads now. So remember when I did that interview? They have that, and it's like they're pumping ads. I had like two people send it to me yesterday,
Yep.
and they're like, "Yo, I got this ad," and it's like me with my quote, and I was like, "Okay, this is nuts.
Yeah,
Like, this is
I get nonstop Kajabi ads on. I'm like, what did I click on? Like, why do I see Kajabi nonstop? Yeah.
yeah, they're pumping people." But anyways, Kajabi. And then I use Kajabi's great if you're just starting off with a course, because they're good at everything,
Hmm.
but they're not necessarily like amazing at one thing. But it's great because you can host your course videos. They have emails on there, like landing pages, all that stuff. So Kajabi's good. I do use EverWebinar. So I have a free masterclass where I teach docs how to do aligners from like at the very start. So that's my free resource, and I host it on EverWebinar. And EverWebinar is great because if you kind of have like something that you want automated, they do a great job of hosting that. And then the third thing I use is ConvertKit. That's my like my email responder. I switched out of Kajabi for the emails and did ConvertKit because you get a little bit more data, a little bit more automations and stuff like that. Um, I think those are the main resources that I use.
And what about
So it's
ads, like
pretty lean.
marketing? How do you market or ad? Like, what do you do?
Oh, so Facebook ads is like my main thing. That is something that I'm still in the process of learning. I compare it to like I'm probably at like a third or fourth grade level of understanding Facebook ads.
Yeah, so you're not
Getting
peeing on yourself. You can go to the bathroom by yourself. You're able to
yeah.
wipe yourself. Like
Oh
you're
God,
good.
getting through kindergarten, I was pissing all over
You're just
myself.
like
Like,
ah.
oh, Facebook daily amount. I don't know. Like, you want reach or lead gen? I don't know what those words are. It's like a whole nother world on that
That's no.
platform.
That's where right now. That's where I'm at. I'm like, oh, and my it was so funny because my husband came in and he like saw he saw me. He's like, damn, you look stressed, and you could see like just fire coming off my head. I'm like, this is so much to take on, but you just keep sticking at it.
Yeah. Well, I could help you out with it. We can talk offline,
Yeah,
but
I
I could show you. I'll show you how I set mine up, and then you could just like
just need
do
to
that.
copy and paste it because it's like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is this? Let's talk about the successes. So you got this done. You have now, this will be launching a couple of weeks later. But again, what has now getting into this world of online, following your heart, following your passion? Like today, I feel a different energy from you. Is there some reason why? I don't know. Like, do I feel, is it a new vibe? Like, what's going on? Because the universe was totally different on, was it Tuesday? When we were,
48 hours ago.
yeah, I was sitting in my car and I was like, he's like, let me tell you why. And I'm like,
I tried to
same.
call you like 6 times. Like we tried to connect like 6 times.
Yeah, and
I've
I
been
was like, I
feeling
don't
like
know.
this.
Well, you're so busy.
Yeah,
I mean, you travel the world. You have your uncle's life. So tell me, tell me what
Oh,
is going on. How successful has the class been?
so it's been great. Basically, just the online business as a whole it's bringing in six figures. Um, I mean, it's brought in six figures in the last year, and I can genuinely say I didn't even know what the heck I was doing for the most part of that year. So it's very exciting to know that as I learn and as I grow, like there's a lot of potential here. But yeah, I mean, energy wise, I'm feeling good because basically in January, like I said, like I went part time with clinical, and I did that as a way to kind of the business was nowhere near in a place for me to go all in on it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll still do dentistry and I'll do the online thing for the rest of the week. And then I think what happened is like we said, I think it's this next level of passion that I'm experiencing where, um, I think I've graduated in the sense where I'm realizing like the universe, I feel like is genuinely yanking me in this direction of going all in on the online business, because it's like there's so much impact that I want to make. There's so much impact that I can make. It's just like I just need more time. Um, so, and I also felt like it's a very night and day difference. And that's what I was telling you, like, the last couple Sundays going into before I would go into work, because I'm doing Monday, Tuesday clinical. I was just feeling this feeling that I used to have in my earlier associateships whenever it was like right before I would leave. Like, it would just be this like Sunday scaries times 10. And this was very new to me because I've created this life over the last year and a half very intentionally, prioritizing happiness, being very logical, being very balanced. And so this feeling was very new. It was new in the sense where I hadn't felt it in a while, but I was very familiar with the feeling. And that's why I was like, this is a red flag. Like, this is not good. And
Yeah,
so I
it's
thought
like
it was
that
just because
that evolution feeling, right?
yep. And so that's why I was like, okay, I think I know where this is going. But I was like, all right, I'm not gonna like open that can yet. And so I let it play out for a whole week. And then it came back again. And then I'm like, okay, I don't like this. I can't do this. Because whenever people get this feeling, and people who are listening, they may have this feeling as well, where it's just almost like this ultimate dread, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm not looking forward to this at all. That's not how you should be going to work, right? Whatever your job is, like it's not healthy, especially as a healthcare provider, because we have to care for people. There are people that depend on us. And it's not responsible to do that for a long period of time. So recognizing that, basically, um, yeah, I have made the decision. Me and my wife kind of sat down, we looked at everything, and I'm deciding to go all in on the online business. So
What? When did this happen?
yeah, it's I mean, it's by the time this launches, I'll probably be done. But yeah, I gave my notice earlier today.
Today?
Right before this podcast.
This is how we're celebrating? Like, I get to know the news? I feel like I'm
Yeah,
one
I
of the.
can't.
I feel like little brother. I feel like I'm actually a part of the family. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like I get to have all the ins and outs. Like
You do. I mean, you look. It goes to show where our relationship and where our friendship is, right? It's just
yeah,
like you are somebody who and this is the whole thing about your tribe, right? The people who you surround yourself with. Like when I first went down this journey, I didn't know anybody else doing this. I just did it, and it was terrifying, right? I've grown apart from friends. I've been through a lot of change, and I think it's so like trusting the fact that like what I put out is what I will get. Could not be more beautiful.
mm,
Like you said, how you open this podcast, like joy, like we got connected, right, through somebody else. They were just, and they said, you two need to talk. Like you two seem like you're doing something that aligns. You guys need to talk, and that was the start. And so like you were, I mean, you were pretty much like the first person I thought to outside of my wife to like voice these feelings to, because I also knew that like you could see me and feel it, and your support. I mean, it meant the world because you validated how I was feeling, and then you gave me some direction, which was prioritizing the health of my marriage, which
yeah,
I appreciate, but it was great because I was able to take that and just sometimes anytime you go through big change, right? It's like it's not that I necessarily needed to hear it,
right.
but when you do hear it, it just makes it feel even better, because you get that support.
Yeah, and I think that things don't happen like coincidentally. Like we are destined, people are destined to be in our lives at different time. I needed you just as much as you needed me, right? I needed you
Mm-hmm.
to keep me on task. I needed you to keep me focused. I needed you to say, all right, so if you want to do this, and even when stuff, my launches, we needed to share resources,
Yep.
and that's the beautiful thing about really listening and paying attention to what your body is telling you, and then what your heart tells you. Avi, from the bottom of my heart, I am so proud of you. And I say that with all the love in the world because you're doing some amazing shit. You're consistently breaking these norms that we have in dentistry that are not necessarily, it's not, you're trailblazing. This is not a clear path. You're one of the forerunners there. And I'm excited to call you friend, but more excited to see how you continue to grow in this journey. We've talked about visions and where we see ourselves on stages, like chopping it up, seeing when we remember when. And from the bottom of my heart,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for your time today, your energy, your efforts, your light. I'm so proud of you, and I hope you feel that.
Thank you. No, I do, and it means the world to hear that from you. Honestly, when I called you the other day and you told me to spread my wings, like I legit teared up when you said that, and that's where it's like, damn, like this is some next level stuff. And yeah, no, I like I said, I appreciate your support, and I'm pumped for where we're both going
Yeah.
because it's not just me. Like you said, if I'm gonna trailblaze this thing, like that means people are coming with, and you're definitely one of those people.
I love that. I love that. Well, guys, this is Beyond the Chair. Avi, where can they find you? Where can they connect to you? And check out your class, even because, guys, this wasn't just to talk to you about online classes. Like, if you're not doing aligners, then this is the guy that you want to learn from.
Yeah, no, it's so Instagram's the easiest. So it's Dr. Avi. It's doctor spelled out. So DOCTOR.AVI. I answer all messages, so you could shoot me a DM on there. I have an email as well, but you could probably throw that in the show notes. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, and the free masterclass, that link is on the Instagram bio too. So
Love
also,
it.
if you're not on Instagram, you got to get on Instagram. I'm sorry, that's the clientele that I'm working with these days.
He's like, if you want to be a part of my VIP group, get an Instagram handle.
Yeah, yeah, come on now. It's 2023, guys. Let's go.
There is judgment. Guys, this is Beyond the Chair. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow dentists, especially if you feel like this interview was very, very beneficial, which we hope it was. Do me a favor. I want to hear the comments. I want to see what people are talking about. And then make sure you put my boy on because he deserves to continue to thrive just like all of you guys as well. Thank you so much.